What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. Dr. Mike Axler here, PhD in kinesiology and applied physiology, professor of exercise science, and 60-plus time marathoner and ultramarathoner. I do want to welcome you to episode 3 of Muscle Month. This is going to be our third installment of our 4-part Muscle Month series, where we are thoroughly examining the science of muscle building, from cellular biology to real-world strategies and just about everything in between. What we've covered so far in week 1, if you haven't seen that video yet, we answered the question of what is hypertrophy. We started Muscle Month describing the muscular biology of muscular hypertrophy. We discussed what skeletal muscle is, what it's comprised of, how it grows, and why it matters for the context of athletes as well as everyone interested in healthy aging, increasing their metabolic rates, and of course, hoping to stave off all future cardiometabolic diseases. So really an interesting episode. We also looked at how mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress trigger anabolic pathways like mTOR, which do lead to muscle hypertrophy. In week 2, we discussed how specifically to train for muscle growth. So last week, when we did shift gears into training, we discussed key training variables that drive muscle growth primarily, including volume, intensity, rest, tempo, and frequency. We also discussed what the literature says about rep ranges, effort, so training to failure or not, and how to use progressive overload to force our muscles to adapt over time. And whether you're more inclined to lift heavy to train for hypertrophy or prefer more high rep training for endurance work, we talked about how to structure your plan to maximize growth. What you'll learn today in episode 3 in Eat to Grow, or whatever we're going to call this one, this week we are zooming in on the nutritional science behind muscle growth. As we had previously discussed, while training is the spark, nutrition is the fuel and the building material through which we actually build new muscle tissue. Without the right ingredients, in the right amounts, at the right times, and even the best training plans will fall short of helping you accomplish your goals. In this episode, among other things, we will cover why muscle growth starts in the kitchen. We'll discuss how to maximize your total daily protein intake as well as meal timing. We'll discuss how carbs and fats support muscle growth and recovery, as well as which supplements may be worth your money and which probably are not, all backed by science. And we'll also dispel some common myths, like the obsession a lot of folks still have with BCAAs, or that idea that more protein automatically means more gains. So my goal is for all of you to leave this episode with a clear roadmap of how to eat in a way that supports your hypertrophy, again, whether your goal is performance, aesthetics, or longevity. So how this all ties together before we start today. The science of hypertrophy is more of a well-rounded, robust, or holistic approach. In episode 1, we gave you the biological why. In episode 2, we gave you the mechanical how. In episode 3, we're giving you the nutritional what. Together, these build the core foundation of muscle growth. And next week, in the final episode, we'll finish with the recovery and hormonal factors that complete the puzzle, including the role of sleep, stress, testosterone, cortisol, and rest days. By the end of this series, you'll not only understand what it takes to build muscle, you'll know how to apply it with purpose and precision. So if you are interested in joining in for episode 3, please continue watching or listening. But before you do so, please make sure to scroll on down and subscribe so you don't miss any of the information that we talked about today if you don't already have the prior information and knowledge from the first 2 episodes. So with that, let's kick off section 1, talking about protein intake, with regard for how much and when. How much protein you need hinges on your goals, your training status, and your overall energy balance. For most individuals focused on maximizing muscle hypertrophy, a daily intake of around 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day strikes the optimal balance between stimulating muscle protein synthesis and practical meal planning. In absolute terms, that means a 75 kilogram athlete, or around someone 165 pounds, would look to consume roughly 120 to 165 grams of protein each day. Where when you're in a caloric deficit, however, such as during contest prep or a cutting phase, or if you're doing a lot of concurrent training with endurance work, raising protein to around 2.2 to 2.6 grams per kilogram per day can help safeguard lean tissue. Further, it's also important to discuss distributing protein across the day. We know that having one huge amount of protein per day, like in one single meal, is not going to be as advantageous as splitting it apart throughout the day. So instead of spreading moderate boluses evenly, or we want to spread moderate boluses evenly around every 3 to 5 hours, as this is going to drive muscle protein synthesis more consistently. Research has demonstrated that consuming around 20 grams of high quality protein every 3 hours post-workout can produce a more sustained anabolic response than larger uneven servings. So in practical terms, shoot for around 20 to 40 grams of protein per meal, targeting around 2.5 grams of leucine to fully activate the mTOR pathway. And we've talked a lot about leucine in past episodes, the first two in this muscle month, and we'll continue to talk about it moving forwards. For older adults, the leucine threshold may be closer to around 3 grams per meal, owing to anabolic resistance, and again, something we've discussed in previous episodes. Protein around your workouts. The old quote-unquote anabolic window myth that you must slam protein within 30 minutes of training has given way to a much more flexible view, or a much more big and robust sliding window, so to speak. Total daily intake drives long-term gains, but consuming around 0.25 to 0.4 grams per kilogram, or around 20 to 30 grams for a 75 kilogram athlete, of protein within 2 hours both before and after exercise helps if you've been fasted or haven't eaten in several hours. So, pre-workout, having a balanced mixed meal snack combining protein, so around 15 to 25 grams, and carbohydrates will increase amino acid availability and a very necessary anabolic insulin response. And we're going to talk a whole lot about insulin a little bit later in this episode. Post-workout, focus on digestible, leucine-rich sources of protein like eggs, casein, milk, eggs, whey, lean meats, egg whites, the whole rest of it, to adequately spike muscle protein synthesis. Awesome. So now that we talked about protein with regard for how much and when, it is important in this next session to discuss protein quality and why this matters, because not all dietary protein is going to be as healthy and bioavailable from source to source to source. Not all proteins are created equally. Two key factors determine how effectively a protein source stimulates muscle protein synthesis. First, its essential amino acid profile, especially leucine content, and second, its digestibility or bioavailability. Leucine, which alongside valine and isoleucine, which are the 3 BCAAs or branched chain amino acids, act as the primary amino acid switch for mTOR activation. Studies indicate we need roughly 2.5 grams of leucine, as we alluded to earlier on in this episode, in a single meal to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis in healthy adults. Without reaching this critical threshold, even a high protein meal may deliver a suboptimal anabolic signal. Alrighty, animal proteins versus plant proteins. This is big. Animal proteins like whey, casein, milk, eggs, egg whites, lean meats, poultry, you get the point. All of these animal proteins deliver all 9 essential amino acids in optimal ratios and boast high bioavailability, producing larger acute muscle protein synthesis spikes than most single plant sources. While plant sources can certainly support hypertrophy, they are incomplete, meaning they do not contain all 9 essential amino acids per serving. So if your goal is to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis while only consuming plant protein sources, you must do 2 things. The first is combine complementary sources such as rice and beans and peas and rice to achieve a full amino acid profile, as some plant protein sources will contain some of the 9 essential amino acids, whereas other sources will contain some combination of other 9 essential amino acids or some of the amino acids. So this makes it incredibly important to know which plant proteins contain which amino acids and in how high of concentrations. Further, increase total intake by around 10 to 20% in order to compensate for lower leucine indigestibility. And I like to make this analogy with my students about bioavailability. If you think about the idea of drinking water, it's with a cup. You can without a doubt get 100% of your water in your mouth relatively effortlessly while drinking out of a cup. So therefore, in this terminology, drinking out of a cup has a high or even the highest bioavailability. In contrast, if you were to have to drink like a dog and bend over, only using your tongue, you'd spill a majority of water on the floor, making this bioavailable drinking method probably less than 50%. And that analogy can be used for how useful, so to speak, plant and animal protein sources are. With animal protein sources, they are so bioavailable, containing all 9 essential amino acids needed to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis, that consuming them is easy, nutritious, and efficacious. Plant proteins, by contrast, while they can certainly be healthy, besides soy, lack all 9 essential amino acids and also aren't fully digested and absorbed by the body, making them a less than advantageous protein source to maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So for plant-based or vegan athletes, a daily target of up to 2.4 grams per kilogram per day can offset these bioavailability gaps and ensure each 25 to 35 gram serving delivers the leucine threshold. But again, the main thing is you have to practice protein complementarity. You can't eat all pea protein or all potato protein. You have to match the different plant protein sources to make sure you're getting enough of the 9 essential amino acids. So please do your homework if you're plant-based. And lastly, on proteins, let's discuss fast versus slow proteins and the strategic timing with this. While research does support the notion that total daily protein intake is more important than protein timing specifically, consuming adequate protein around workouts, and as we had said, can be important, especially for folks training more than once per day, maybe concurrently training with endurance work, and potentially are in a caloric deficit. So while whey protein is leucine rich, is a highly bioavailable protein source that is quickly digesting, having it after a workout is great, but so is just drinking milk, having some lean dairy, poultry, or even meat. Casein as well, which we'll talk about later. Studies have detailed casein is great to have before a nighttime fast because it is slow to digest and thus creates a longer muscle protein synthetic response. But in general, you can also consume protein at any other time point during the day or not at all. But it's always a good idea to have adequate protein before bed, even 1 to 3 hours before, to make sure you're still anabolic heading into a night's rest. Awesome. Let's now talk about carbohydrates and muscle growth, because carbs are way more important for muscle growth, muscle recovery, and just all around energy and workouts, way more than people think. I still have a lot of friends in the gym and students and clients who will tell me with like a brag that they're low carb, as if it's like they need a pat on the back for being low carb. That's not good by any means. We need glucose from carbohydrates. Glucose is going to be one of the 3 primary monosaccharides, which makes up carbohydrates, and that is the only fuel source that our brain and our spinal cord run off of. And even fruits and veggies, as we'll talk about, which are made up of fructose and cellulose respectively, are immensely healthy for us to give us energy. They provide antioxidant support to make sure we don't get sick. They provide anti-inflammatory effects. So please do not go low carb. Just eat the good stuff. Throw out the chips and all the pretzels and just eat the good stuff. Anyway, let's get back onto the script that I wrote, because I edited a lot and it's all based in science. So carbs have been unfairly villainized in some corners of the fitness world. But for those people out there who are serious about performance and hypertrophy, carbohydrates are non-negotiable, as I alluded to. They do fuel training, they support recovery, and play pivotal roles in muscle maintenance during caloric deficits. First off, carbs fuel intensity and volume. During moderate to high intensity training, carbohydrates are your muscles' preferred energy source. They power repeated contractions, help maintain training quality, and replenish glycogen post-exercise for optimal recovery. Current guidelines suggest consuming around 3 to 6 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per day, depending on the intensity and the duration of your training. Again, going back to this 75 kilogram athlete, or around 165 pound person, because that is the average weight, I think, or at least for a man it is, that translates to around 225 to 450 grams of carbs daily. It is important to consume more slow digesting, low glycemic index carbs, such as that from a variety of fruits, veggies, and whole grains. It doesn't matter what vegetable, it doesn't matter what fruit, or even whole grain type. Just get a nice colorful array, so to speak, of fruits and veggies, because when you do this, all of the different colors of fruits and veggies means you're getting in different vitamins and minerals from each and every source. So get in your yellows, your greens, your reds, your purples, your blues, and you'll be tasting the rainbow, so to speak. These are going to support stable energy, increases in nutrient density, and long-term health, while maximizing recovery and performance. Already, low carbs equals low glycogen equals compromised gains. And this one goes out to all the folks out there who want to get big and strong but are afraid to eat carbs. Inadequate carbohydrate intake results in depleted muscle glycogen. So you're basically running out of energy. That can lead to reduced training output, delayed recovery, and increased risk of muscle protein breakdown. Training under glycogenated conditions consistently, meaning outside of strategic metabolic blocks, risks impairing your strength adaptations and hypertrophy stimuli. Insulin. Let's now talk about insulin. So let's talk about insulin's role, as it is anti-catabolic and it is not the enemy. Insulin is not often misunderstood. I feel like it's always misunderstood. While chronically elevated insulin from poor dietary habits can be very problematic, insulin in the context of training is deeply anabolic. Insulin suppresses muscle protein breakdown, helping to preserve lean tissue post-exercise. Insulin enhances nutrient delivery, especially when paired with leucine-rich protein after training. And insulin also amplifies muscle repair by increasing net protein balance. Consuming protein alongside carbohydrates post-workout supports both glycogen resynthesis and muscle protein synthesis, fueling the recovery adaptation cycle. And you can think of insulin as your body's fuel retention system. Without it, glucose from meals would spill out unused like a gas tank without a hole. This is why insulin isn't quote-unquote bad. It's essential in keeping us alive. What's risky, however, is chronic insulin elevation, as we had said, from poor lifestyle choices like excessive sugar intake and inactivity. Awesome. Let's go on to smart carbohydrate choices. So avoid oversimplifying things. Yes, insulin spikes from refined sugar and candy intake. We know this. And in turn, this can increase your risks of developing central adiposity, so tons of body fat, various cardiometabolic diseases, type 2 diabetes, which also you can throw on that list, stroke, heart attack, inflammation, neurodegenerative diseases. Very much not good. But that is going to be context dependent. Slowly digesting carbohydrates from fruits, veggies, and whole grains can improve metabolic flexibility. It can improve fuel exercise. It can improve support. It can help support recovery and promote longevity. So carbohydrates are not inherently fattening or inflammatory. They're one of the most potent allies in your muscle building toolkit when used strategically. Alrighty, lastly, let's talk about pre-workout carbohydrates for better training. Having sufficient muscle glycogen before your session is critical for maximizing workout intensity, focus, endurance, and adaptive signaling. Pre-training carbohydrates can help lower perceived effort and boost output, especially in sessions exceeding 60 minutes. Studies consistently show that elevated glycogen levels directly correlate with enhanced performance and hypertrophy signaling. In contrast, training in a low-carb or fasted state increases cortisol and reduces muscle protein synthesis. So that's why I always tell my athletes and my students, never, ever, under any circumstance, if you're trying to get stronger, if you're trying to get faster, if you're trying to go for performance gains, or even if you're trying to be healthier and you're trying to just put on muscle and bone mass, don't go into a workout fasted. Give yourself the gift of healthy nutrition. Give yourself fruits, veggies, and lean proteins to go into a nice training session. You don't need thousands of calories, maybe even 200, 300, 400 calories before a session is enough to really spark a great training session and then to recover from that. So I wanted to put in some research in there to describe how important pre-workout carbohydrates are, in that they'll give you a much better workout, a better stimulus in order for you to positively adapt. Already the TLDR on strategic carbs for bigger gains, because this was a kind of a long section. So look to consume around 3 to 6 grams per kilogram per day of body weight based on activity level. Go on the lighter side if you're a little less active, and even go over that if you're super active. Take in more whole foods, meaning more low glycemic index carbohydrate sources. And I have a whole video on carbohydrates if you want to go watch that to understand how those work. Use pre-workout carbohydrates to boost performance, and avoid fasted resistance training unless periodizing for metabolic goals. Like if you're dieting down for a show, or you're trying to become more lipolytic, so fat burning. But I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. Awesome. Next section, let's talk about dietary fats. Dietary fats, and there's a difference between fat and dietary fat. Fat on your body is called adiposity or adipose tissue. Dietary fat is what we eat. Awesome. So dietary fats often get a bad rap, but they are indispensable for hormone production, recovery, and overall performance. Skimping on dietary fats can undermine the very processes you rely on to build and maintain your hard-earned muscle. First, let's talk about hormonal support. Dietary fats are the building blocks for sex hormones like testosterone, which are critical for muscle growth, recovery, and performance. Consuming a higher fat diet, especially one rich in mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, so the healthy fats or the MUFAs and the PUFAs, have been shown to elevate testosterone levels compared with low-fat diets. Dropping below 20% of your total daily calories from fat may impair hormone synthesis and blunt anabolic signaling over time, leading to reduced muscle protein synthesis, lower training intensity, decreased libido, and slower recovery. Next, fats timing. We want to keep fats away from the workout window. We know, and you should know from eating any type of fat source, that dietary fats are going to slow gastric emptying and delay nutrient absorption, making them suboptimal around your training sessions. Pre-workout, again, consume more carbohydrates and protein for quick energy and amino acids. Post-workout, again, focus on the carbs, plus the protein, plus the hydration to maximize glycogen resynthesis and muscle repair. But when you are resting, when you're kicking your feet up, rest and digest. Include the bulk of your dietary fats to support overall health and recovery. However, again, choose your fats wisely. Throughout the day, focus on healthy fats that support anti-inflammatory pathways, cell membrane integrity, and immune function, especially during intense training cycles. Omega-3 sources such as fatty fish, flax seeds, and walnuts, just to name a few, as well as some of the mono and polyunsaturated fatty acid sources coming from olive oil, avocados, almonds, macadamia nuts, and other seeds. These dietary fats can help mitigate inflammation. They can help promote tissue repair and sustain your metabolic health. So the TLDR for smart dietary fat strategies: keep your dietary fat intake to around 20 to 30% of total caloric intake. Consume more mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids and lesser so of the saturated fats. So chips, candy, any junk you find at the grocery store that's like comes in like a bag, cookies, baked goods, not good for you. Consume dietary fats away from pre and post workout meals, and use dietary fats when you are relaxing, resting, and digesting to support your hormones or your hormonal milieu as well as your recovery. Alrighty, next section, supplements that work, backed by science, until we get to supplements that don't work, backed by science. Supplements are just that, supplements. They are not substitutes. They're supplement, meaning to add to. They enhance the foundation you build with whole foods, smart training, and recovery. What is to come are going to be the most evidence-backed picks to amplify strength, hypertrophy, and performance. First off, you can probably see this coming, whey and casein, fast and slow protein delivery, respectively. Both whey and casein proteins are derived from cow's milk and are naturally occurring. Complete protein sources, meaning they provide all 9 essential amino acids required for muscle protein synthesis. When milk is curdled and strained during the cheese making process, whey is that thin liquid portion which rises to the top, and casein is the solid curd which sinks to the bottom. But both are high quality, bioavailable protein sources, and also relatively inexpensive. Whey is considered a fast digesting protein, meaning it is rapidly absorbed and leads to a quick spike in blood amino acid levels, particularly leucine. Whey does contain around 10 to 12% leucine, the key amino acid that stimulates muscle protein synthesis via activation of the mTOR pathway. Research does suggest that whey is better able to stimulate greater acute muscle protein synthesis than casein or soy in young resistance trained individuals following exercise bouts, making whey an ideal post-workout recovery supplement when the body is just naturally more primed to rebuild and recover due to heightened insulin sensitivity and nutrient uptake. Further, casein digests much more slowly than whey, forming a gel-like substance in the stomach. It provides a sustained release of amino acids over several hours. This makes it especially useful before bed or during long-term fasting periods. Early research on casein shows that casein leads to reduced rates of protein breakdown and more sustained nitrogen balance over a 6 to 8 hour postprandial or digestive period window in comparison with whey. And further, casein can be a great tool for muscle preservation overnight, especially for athletes in a caloric deficit or looking to maximize recovery between sessions and stay fuller longer. However, overall, both whey and casein do promote muscle protein synthesis to a very large degree. They just work through different mechanisms and timing windows. Whey is fast absorbing and provides a quick anabolic boost at any time of the day, not just around your workouts. Casein, on the other hand, is slower to digest and is anti-catabolic in nature. So you don't have to choose one over the other, as they can both be used interchangeably throughout the day, depending on the timing of your meals, your goals, and your dietary needs. But if you were looking for options of times to consume the two protein sources, whey post-workout or first thing in the morning would not be the worst idea. And casein before bed or between meals for a slower release also wouldn't be terrible. Next, supplement number 3, because whey, casein were number 2. Next, creatine monohydrates can be number 3. You probably saw that coming as well. And I have a whole video on creatine monohydrate. This is going to be the gold standard strength enhancer, so to speak. Creatine monohydrate has the deepest research backing of any sports supplement. The standard dose is around 3 to 5 grams per day to saturate intramuscular phosphocreatine stores. Creatine monohydrate boosts high-intensity power, strength, and training volume. Creatine monohydrate also enhances satellite cell activity for greater muscle hypertrophy. And the big kicker is that creatine monohydrate is safe for long-term use and beneficial across age groups, including older adults. And you can stack your creatine or put your creatine inside your pre-workout shake or mix it into any drink, oatmeal, Greek yogurt, whatever. Next, leucine and essential amino acid blends. As we talked about quite a bit today, leucine acts as a key anabolic trigger by activating the mTOR pathway, which initiates muscle protein synthesis. However, isolated leucine is less effective than consuming complete protein sources, which supply all essential amino acids. EAAs, or essential amino acids, as we said, there are 9 of them. EAA blends can be helpful in situations where whole protein intake is limited, such as during fasted periods, low-calorie diets, or in older adults. EAAs can stimulate protein synthesis, but should supplement and not replace high-quality whole food proteins. Further, number 4, 5, 6, HMB, beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate. It's an awesome compound word to say once you can say HMB. HMB is a metabolite of leucine, meaning it comes from leucine, and may help preserve muscle mass during periods of caloric restriction, bed rest, or in novice lifters. HMB, beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate, has been shown to reduce muscle protein breakdown and support lean mass retention. However, HMB's usefulness in well-trained individuals is limited. So I'm guessing anyone watching this is well-trained. Maybe HMB isn't for you. Most hypertrophy-focused studies show minimal benefit, if any, in experienced lifters, so HMB may be best suited for beginners or during muscle wasting conditions. And personally, I've never taken HMB, but I've looked it up before, and it's kind of expensive, and there doesn't really seem to be any downfall, but there also doesn't really seem to be any positive. So there's your science for you. Next, caffeine and beta-alanine. Caffeine and beta-alanine aren't directly anabolic, but they can increase training volume and intensity, which indirectly supports hypertrophy. Caffeine improves focus and power output, while beta-alanine buffers lactate and hydrogen ion buildup to delay fatigue. Using these strategically in the way of caffeine around 30 to 60 minutes pre-workout and beta-alanine as a daily dose of 3 to 6 grams can enhance work capacity during resistance training. Over time, this improved performance can lead to greater muscle growth adaptations. And I've done some videos on caffeine in the past, and I'll do more in the future. But it is important to note here that caffeine in a lot of these research studies was either done with coffee beans or like espresso beans. So they would just give them like coffee or espresso or the actual bean, or they'd give them like tea leaves or actual just caffeinated tea, because those are going to be the naturally occurring sources, which are going to be science-backed, healthy, natural, whereas the energy drinks, as we know, aren't going to be as healthy of options. So use your discretion with caffeine, but anytime that you see that caffeine is great for improving focus and power output and cognition, it's like, yeah, from coffee beans and like tea leaves, not from, energy drinks with all these other ingredients in there that you don't know how to pronounce. So use your discretion. Your TLDR, your supplement cheat sheet: whey protein for fast-acting muscle protein synthesis spikes, and casein for sustained anti-catabolism. Creatine monohydrate by way of 3 to 5 grams per day is non-negotiable for strength and size. EAA blends fill the gaps when whole food protein is limited. HMB is great during times of caloric deficits or with untrained lifters. And both caffeine and beta-alanine go together pretty well to boost training intensity. Next, on what to not waste your money on. And these are just a couple right here. I can make an entire video on what. I think I did make an entire video on like what supplements are science-backed and may be helpful and which ones are not. First, BCAAs, or the branched chain amino acids, so leucine, isoleucine, and valine. They do stimulate muscle protein synthesis, but only partially and temporarily. Without the other 6 essential amino acids, this process cannot be sustained. Numerous research studies have supported the notion that BCAA supplementation alone does not lead to net muscle gain when total protein intake is adequate. If you're already consuming sufficient high-quality protein by way of 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day, BCAA supplements are redundant and largely unnecessary. They may reduce perceived fatigue slightly during fasted training, but they will not build more muscle than complete protein sources. Further, testosterone boosters, glutamine, and proprietary blends. Testosterone boosters show no consistent benefits for hypertrophy in healthy men. And I'm guessing if you're watching this, you're probably a healthy man. Most natural T boosters fail to significantly raise testosterone to the point that would impact strength or muscle mass. Glutamine, which is another type of amino acid, has theoretical benefits for immunity and gut health, but has not been shown to increase muscle growth in healthy individuals or athletes. Similarly, proprietary blends often hide underdosed or ineffective ingredients under label, fairy dust, making them poor investments compared to real food and transparent supplements. Awesome. Let's land this plane. Summary from today. Muscle growth, as we know, starts in the kitchen. Training provides the stimulus, but muscle growth depends on recovery and nutrition, especially protein and total energy intake or total calorie intake. Without sufficient calories and nutrients, the body does not have the building blocks to repair and grow muscle tissue after training. Even with optimal training, poor dietary habits can blunt hypertrophy. Undereating, especially in protein or total calories, can leave muscles in a net catabolic state, leading to suboptimal or even negative gains. Further, prioritize total protein intake and distribution. Research consistently shows that total daily protein intake is the biggest driver of muscle protein synthesis, especially when intakes reach around 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Hitting this number over the course of your day is more important than obsessing over any one single meal. Equally important is how you spread that protein out. Consuming 20 to 40 grams of high quality protein every 3 to 4 hours helps keep muscle protein synthesis elevated and improves long-term goals. Front-loading or back-loading protein may miss the anabolic windows. Further, use carbohydrates and dietary fats strategically to fuel and hormones. Carbohydrates provide critical energy for high-intensity training and help reduce muscle protein breakdown by maintaining insulin levels. A low carbohydrate diet can compromise training volume, especially for hypertrophy-style training. Dietary fats are essential for hormonal production and cellular health, as diets which are too low in dietary fat may lower testosterone and hinder recovery. A balanced intake of both carbohydrates and dietary fats can help support the training demands and hormonal environment needed for growth. Further, creatine works. Don't ignore it. Don't think of it as like a drug. Creatine monohydrate is one of the most well-studied and effective supplements for increasing strength, power, and lean mass. Meta-analyses consistently show significant improvements in resistance training performance and muscle growth across various populations. Creatine monohydrate also has potential cognitive and recovery benefits and safe for long-term use. A daily dose of just 3 to 5 grams is sufficient, with no need for a loading phase unless you want faster saturation. And most supplements are not worth your money. Beyond creatine, the protein powders, whey and casein, and possibly caffeine and beta-alanine, most over-the-counter supplements offer minimal or no measurable benefits in trained individuals. The supplement industry often markets hype over substance and cool-looking labels. So spending money on testosterone boosters, BCAAs, or muscle stacks, I hate every time I see that, usually brings no better results than a high-quality, protein-rich diet. So invest in food, training, sleep, and proven basics before turning to fringe products. Awesome. So with that, I do want to thank you for tuning into another episode, number 3 in this muscle month. I do hope you enjoyed. I've been having a lot of fun just researching all of these topics, throwing together a lot of this research and the script, and of course recording this and putting this out for all of you guys. So it's been a lot of fun on my end, and I hope you're enjoying as well. If you do enjoy, please make sure to scroll down, like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend so that you will not miss all of the future research on muscle, metabolism, endurance, and nutrition. And make sure to stay tuned for next week's episode on muscle, aging, and longevity. And as always, it is about that time of day again when I'm going to go hit the gym, and I hope you will as well. And remember, consistency wins, and catch you all in the next episode. Thanks so much for watching.